What do you do when life changes and the things you had planned on are taken away? Or your vision of what your life would look like is altered or completely shattered, and you feel like you have no say or control? We're not really taught in school how to deal with challenges like this, but it's the most important lesson you can learn in your life, because as Benjamin Franklin said, the only constant in life is change. You've heard the phrase, we are what we think about, but I want you to understand that this isn't just a phrase or something people say, but know that this is truth in how your brain and your body operate, because it is. And it all starts with you, and it all starts in here. In 1973, a man was hired to fix a refrigerated boxcar in the back of a train. And somehow he got himself stuck inside the boxcar. He started to panic. He was banging on the walls, screaming, but no one was around. And because it was padded, no one could hear him. So he started to panic, thinking he was going to freeze to death. And he found a penny and started to write down his thoughts on the wall. First, I'm becoming colder. Nothing to do but wait. He writes further, half asleep now, I can hardly write. And finally he says, these might be my last words. Hours later, they discover him missing, they find him, they open up the boxcar, and he has died. But the temperature inside the refrigerated boxcar is only 56 degrees. The freezing apparatus was broken, and there was plenty of air in the boxcar, so there was no physical reason for this healthy man to die. And the best guess that they had was that he had literally talked himself into dying. We are what we think about. Your subconscious mind, which is the part of your brain that is responsible for up to 95% of how you think, how you emotionally respond, and how you behave. That part of your brain does not know the difference between what actually is and what we believe to be. It doesn't try to prove whether your thoughts are good or bad, or true or false. It just accepts them and reacts accordingly. We are what we believe. So your mind can quite literally hold you prisoner, or thankfully in my situation, it can set you free. Because when I was 13 years old, my life changed overnight. I went from dancing 5 hours a day, loving life, my nickname was the Energizer Bunny, to overnight literally fighting for my life. And I remember one appointment in particular. The doctor comes in, he rolls up that stool next to me, he takes this deep breath, and he looks at me in the eyes, and he says, you need to accept you're not going to live past your teenage years. You're never going to dance again. You're never going to get married. You're never going to have children. You're never going to live a normal, active life. And the sooner that you come to terms with this, the easier it will be to accept it. I have never felt such extremes in emotions from one minute to the next. Suddenly, I've never felt such unbelief and devastation. How would this happen to my life? How would this happen to me? But then in the next moment, to feel relentless determination, to not accept his limitations on what my life would look like. So I took possibly the biggest deep breath of my entire life. I squared my shoulders, I looked up at him, and I said, I don't accept this. And he did not like my answer, so much so he sent in a psychologist to talk to me, to help me to come to terms with my reality. And I remember looking at the psychologist and I said, listen, no one is more aware of how dire my situation is than me. I'm the one living in this body. I can feel it shutting down. But I know that if I wholeheartedly accept that I'm going to die, then I will. So I said, I have two scenarios here, two possible scenarios. One, I can die, I will die, but I will go out fighting. Or two, I can defy the odds and live. And so I decided to put all of my energy and focus in the second scenario. And instead of spending all of my time thinking about how I didn't want to die, I would put all my thoughts, my prayers, my visualizations, my energy, my efforts into living. We are what we think about. So your brain can hold you prisoner or it can set you free. A healthy man literally talked himself into dying. And I literally willed myself to live. And it was not easy. And I had to take that will day after day after day. There was a time frame during my illness which lasted for over 4 years of me living in this fight for my life. There was a time I was so sick that I couldn't even utter a word or lift a finger. And I remember looking at my mom and saying, I don't even know how I'm breathing because it hurts and takes too much effort to lay here. And during this time, I was actually afraid to go to sleep, and I would will myself to stay awake because I felt like if I surrendered my mental control to my physical body, that I wouldn't wake up. That I could literally will my body to hang in there, to keep fighting, that we could overcome what others were saying was the impossible. And thankfully, I did. And everything they said I would never do, I did.
Put your hands together for Ashley and Ryan.
The brain is the most incredible, amazing tool that we have. But instead of utilizing it to create the life we want, most of us are prisoners to it because we don't understand that our brain has a tactical advantage over us at all times. And why? Because it knows our fears, it knows our insecurities. It knows our past experiences and our emotions. It knows what we don't want to do or what we're afraid to do. And your brain cares most about protecting you and keeping you safe. So it's actually programmed to guide you away from the things that make you uncomfortable, from the things that make you feel unsafe. The survival mechanisms of your brain, the protection mechanisms, are so much stronger than the thriving mechanisms. So if we just leave everything to our brain, especially during challenges or hard times, then the brain's default mode is negativity. It's to protect you. It's to see everything as a potential threat to keeping you safe. So here's the truth. Your brain will always win until you condition it and reprogram it. Neuroscience has shown that the more often you think the same thoughts, those thoughts begin to wire certain circuits in your brain, and the nerve cells that fire together wire together. So what does that mean? Over time, those thoughts become hardwired in your brain, and those are now the thoughts you think the easiest. What does that mean? The more you think anxious thoughts, fearful thoughts, insecure thoughts, lonely thoughts, the more your brain gets programmed to think that way and to see your life through that lens. So you can literally Condition your brain to think disempowering thoughts or empowering thoughts. And again, that choice is yours. Because everything we do starts with a thought. We have a thought before we feel an emotion, and then we take action. I remember about 2 years into my illness, when we weren't finding answers, I was getting sicker and sicker. And I remember in late night when I was all by myself, and I could feel the weight of the magnitude of what was ahead of me. It felt impossible. It felt like a mountain that I could never get to the top of, let alone on the other side of. And I suddenly felt so overwhelmed and insecure because it was up to me if I was going to survive, up to my faith and up to my resiliency and up to all my efforts to do every single treatment, even after one after the other kept failing. But then my higher self, the part of my brain I had conditioned to empower me instead of disempower me, changed that from feeling overwhelmed to empowered, because it was up to me. Not anyone or anything else. It was up to me. When I had felt like everything had been taken from me and I had no say or control, my greatest power was within. And it's within you. You know, the way to control your life is to control your choice of words and thoughts about your life. Because in reality, it's not really about the hard or the challenge. It's our focus on the hard. It's our focus on what is instead of what could be. And so often we want to look at something to blame, right? This happened to me, so I'm like this. They did that, so I feel like this. But in reality, circumstances don't define who you are. You do. And that distinction is so important for you to understand moving into this next chapter in your life, because hardship and challenges might temporarily define what you can do and how certain aspects in your life are going. But only you can give them the power to decide who you are. You know, 3 weeks after I had my first hip surgery, so this is in my professional career, I had my first of 3 hip surgeries, and I went to see my husband in a professional production. He's my professional partner you saw in my video, and I remember sitting in the audience, and this of course is after I had spent 6 years out of dance when I was sick. So I already felt like no one appreciated doing what they loved more than I did. And I remember sitting in the audience in this huge hip brace with my crutches in pain and watching my husband and other dancers move with such fluidity and strength, and just being again hit with the long journey I had ahead of getting there. But more than anything, I felt this sense of loss, because once again, my greatest passion in life had been taken away. And I remember thinking, the stage is my sanctuary. And then again, like that higher self, part of my brain that I had trained to see the empowering side of things, corrected me and said, no, you are your sanctuary. I am my sanctuary. You are your sanctuary. Your heart, your soul, who you are, that has nothing to do with your physical body, other people, or external situations. You are your greatest strength, and no one can take that from you but you. And it's so important for you to learn this, because life will be full of ups and downs. No one is exempt. 4 years ago, in 2016, I went into my second hip surgery and it failed. And it launched my entire body into widespread chronic pain and dysfunction and health problems. And I went from my strongest and healthiest physical self to now struggling to do basic things like walk or sit on the floor and play with my daughter. I lost my career as a professional dancer and a personal trainer. And I was told once again to accept that my life would never look the same. And I remember looking up to God and saying, I don't understand. I fought for my life for over 4 years. I beat the odds. I almost died. I already had my life-altering experience. Like, what else can I learn from something this hard? And the truth was, a lot. More than I could have ever anticipated, and put me on the pathway to doing what I was really supposed to be doing in my life. And I couldn't have survived these last 4 years as a mother, as a wife, as a business owner, struggling to do any daily activity, living in widespread chronic pain and health issues again, if I wasn't able to leverage that lesson I learned as a teenager to surrender the things I couldn't control and focus all of my energy and efforts into the things I could. You know, so many people go through life surviving and not realizing or embracing that the difference between surviving and thriving has nothing to do with your physical body, external circumstances, or other people, and everything to do with choice. Thriving isn't about anything outside of us. It's a state of being, one we can always choose. But I want you to understand, you're not always going to be able to control feeling fear or anxiety or insecurity or loneliness or depression. And there's value in experiencing all spectrums of human emotions. You better believe through all that I've endured in my life, I have experienced them all. But it's not about not feeling different emotions. It's about how long we dwell in them, if we are feeding them, or if we choose to feed something else. So instead of fighting so hard to not feel emotions, put all your effort and energy into building your belief in yourself and what you're capable, in love, in hope, in believing in the best possible outcome instead of the worst. Build your faith in God, in this universe, in why you are here, and your unique talent and skills that only you can bring. And by doing this, by putting your energy into the positive instead of fighting the negative, into light instead of darkness, the light takes away the darkness, and the empowering suffocates the disempowering. And you will be able to endure and overcome and achieve the impossible. You can thrive no matter what is happening in your life. And I know this because I haven't just lived it once, but now twice.
Every moment has led us to this day. Every journey that brought us to this place. We're filled with wonder that words couldn't ever contain. This is what we've been waiting for. At the dawn of forevermore, we can stand on this ground.
Life will always be an up and down journey. Sometimes you're sprinting, and sometimes you're walking or standing still. And sometimes the path is smooth with sunshine, and sometimes it's bumpy and riddled with storms. But the most important thing is to not project these storms as something more than they are, which is temporary. As Abraham Lincoln said, "I walk slowly, but I never walk backwards." And from someone who has quite literally had to relearn how to walk at 3 different times in my life, I can tell you that it's not the pace of your life that matters. It's the direction. And that is decided by who you are and who you decide to become. So you can adopt the attitude that there is nothing you can do and be the victim. Or you can see the challenge as you're called to action and to be the victor. We are what we think about. But let me tell you, it is a gift to be called to take action in your life, to have to look within and truly decide who you are and what you believe and what you will become. Because how you decide to see your life will determine your life more than anything else. So as you move forward in this next chapter of your life, this is my challenge to you. From this day forward, stop talking so much about what you don't want and give all your thoughts, time, energy, and efforts into what you do. Take accountability and ownership for your life. And don't be overwhelmed. Be empowered that your greatest power is within. And when things get hard, give yourself grace. Allow yourself to feel all spectrums of emotions that are part of this human experience. Mourn the loss of something that changed or was taken away. You can cry, you can scream, you can do whatever you need to process it out so you can let it go. And then you take a deep breath and you square your shoulders and you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I am more than this. My life is more than this. And then you remind yourself of the most fundamental truth. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become.